What's up guys, welcome back to the Oliver Goods Workshop. My name is Mason, and today I'm going to be showing you all the things that you need to get started in Leathercraft. I'm going to show you some options from the cheaper end to the more expensive end. You don't necessarily need the most expensive tools, you just need a tool that will get the job done. Just keep in mind that the more expensive tools, they'll stay sharper longer, if they'll just be more durable over time. I will show you kind of the cheaper option of what I use to get started, and then some of the more expensive tools that I've kind of upgraded to over time. You can't get started in Leathercraft without some knives. So with knives, you can't go wrong with just a good old-fashioned utility knife. This is a craft tool knife that I got from Tandy Leather. I still use this pretty much every day. Really great for going around little turns and doing little finer cuts. Really can't beat something like this. They also have more expensive versions like this. This is another one that I got at Tandy Leather. I actually don't love this one because the ergonomics just don't feel very good in my hand. It feels too bulky around the blade, and so this one kind of just sits on the shelf. Another knife that you're going to need is a rotary cutter. This is an Alpha cutter. It's made in Japan. This is by far the best rotary cutter I've ever used. I started with a cheaper one like this from Tandy Leather. It's a little craft tool one. This one works just fine. The biggest difference with this is a 45 millimeter and this is a 60 millimeter, if you can see that difference. So if you're doing trim allowance or anything like that where you're needing to cut through several layers of leather at the end of your project, this is definitely the way to go, because this one sometimes doesn't make it all the way through all of your layers. Another knife option that you will likely need at some point, I love this knife. I use this knife for all kinds of things, not just skiving, but it's a Japanese skiving knife. This is an actual Japanese knife. It is very sharp. It is very durable. I've had very little issues with chipping corners. I had a much cheaper version of this. I've gone through actually a couple of versions of these that I got cheaper on Amazon. I will say this is one tool that I will recommend that you just spend the money and get a good one, because the cheaper ones do not stay sharp and a dull knife is not very safe. You can use this knife pulling towards you like a draw knife. You can use this knife like a skiving knife, which is what it was intended for. I use this for a lot of things. That is all you need to know about knives. Next, we're talking pricking irons. There's a couple things that you need to know about pricking irons, and this is gonna be kind of a few parts, but there's three types of pricking irons that I would recommend. There's a round dent, there's a diamond, those are technically punches, and then there's more of like a French style pricking iron. So pricking irons are one of those things, or stitching punches. It's kind of one of those things that you do get what you pay for in this area. So this is an example of one of the first ones that I ever got. This is just a single tooth. I can't find the rest of my pricking irons from this set. You can see that it's kind of like a black coated material here. These are not very sharp, and they are a nightmare to pull out of your leather because they are not polished on the ends. I do not necessarily recommend these, but if you're in a pinch and you need something that's cheap, this will work. I quickly moved on from these to a diamond pricking iron or punch. These are from Tandy Leather. Again, these are the Tandy Pro diamond chisels. These are the 5 millimeter variant. These are good. I liked these. They have polished teeth, so they pull out of the leather fairly easily. I went ahead and bought an 8 tooth, a 4 tooth, and a 2 tooth. That's important because you need as many teeth as you can get for straight lines. And if you have smaller things, I like to have like a 4 to 5 tooth. And then the 2 tooth is necessary to go around corners. I moved on from those to more of a French style. This is a Blanchard, Vergez Blanchard pricking iron. These are legit and they are very expensive. I actually bought these from a friend of mine and I love them. I have one drawback to these. They don't have very deep teeth. These are kind of meant to mark the top of your leather and then use something like a stitching awl like this. So this is a stitching awl. That's not really my preferred method of stitching, so I have kind of moved on from these Blanchard irons as well, even though they are by far my most expensive set of pricking irons. I don't use them as much because Ryan over at Little King Supply Co. has made, in my opinion, the perfect pricking iron. It is the best price I have ever seen for a pricking iron. When I first started this, I really wanted to work my way up to get something like the Cinnabrox. I purchased this entire set of pricking irons from Little King Supply Co. for about the same price as what one 8-tooth or 10-tooth Cinnabrox iron would have cost. I've been using the Little King Supply Co. pricking irons pretty much exclusively for the last 5 months. These are the V2 versions. They're just beautiful. They look so good. They have really tall teeth here, which helps me go all the way through a wallet. The set of these came with a 10-tooth, a 5-tooth, and a 2-tooth. They are very, very even and accurate. Highly recommend getting those. They are almost always sold out, so you need to go over to his website, littleKingSupplyCo.com, and I would sign up for email updates for when they come back with them, because as soon as they come out, you need to buy them. I believe they were $145 for the entire set, which is wild. This Vergez Blanchard tool right here is $225 just by itself. So the value of these is phenomenal. Something that you will need if you get pricking irons, a punch pad, and you're going to need a mallet. So punch pads, they come in all different kinds of shapes and sizes. This is one that I've had for a while. You can see it is beat up and really messed up. The downside to one like this is like cutting board material. This is what it looks like when it's brand new. The downside to these cutting board materials is that one, they kind of bow and warp after a while. I don't know if you can see that, but they get kind of wonky. The other thing is that this ends up getting really rough, and you kind of have to put down a scrap piece of leather over the top of it to prevent yourself from like tearing up your leather when you're punching through it. So I recommend more of something like this. This is just a clear punch pad. Mallets, you will need some kind of mallet. I use this mallet. This is a Berry King mallet. It's just a little one. I have another one that's a lot bigger. This is a Stallman mallet. I use this one more for like punching through like belts and things, because this one is much heavier. I do all of my like little wallets and stuff with this guy. It's great. I started with just a black plastic craft tool mallet. I think it's technically called a maul. I started with that from Tandy. It worked great. I upgraded to these because I had a friend that was selling a bunch of stuff, and these work better. But you don't necessarily need something that's this expensive to get started. You can use something that is just a cheap one. I prefer this shape because it doesn't matter what direction your wrist is in, you're gonna hit flat every time, as opposed to if you have something that's got more of like a mallet head on it that's got a flat surface on either side. If you turn your wrist at all, it gets kind of crooked, and then you can end up messing up the teeth on your stitching punches, or you could punch in really crooked and then your holes are messed up and you got to start over. So another tool that you will probably see me use a lot on this channel is this guy. This is called an edge rougher. This is just a craft tool one, again, that I got from Tandy. This is great. I don't know why you would need anything more than this. I'm sure they make more expensive edge roughers that are made in America. This is a perfect tool in my opinion. It's cheap. You're just gonna use it to rough up the finished side of your leather. It's gonna help your glue bond better. Now you can achieve the same kind of thing with like an emery board sandpaper like this. They also sell these at Tandy. The downside to these is that they wear out really, really quickly, and you go through a ton of them. This has a metal, almost like a file or a rasp on the end of it, And so you're gonna buy this tool one time, you're probably never gonna ever have to replace it. It works phenomenal. It's real easy to like get really detailed with it and make sure that you're not roughing up too far outside your lines where you're gonna be gluing. It's just a really great tool, super important in my opinion to make sure that your edges don't ever lift or separate. 100% worth the money. If you have room in your budget, I would recommend getting multiple of these. Here's why. I use 3 different measurements when I'm working on something. I use a 4mm stitching guide. So I mark from the edge of my finished piece in 4mm, and that's where I punch my holes for stitching. I do a 5mm trim allowance on certain projects, so that means I've given myself an extra 5mm of room so that I can just mark 5mm, use that rotary cutter and just cut it off straight and smooth and flush, and then it's a lot less sanding I have to do at the end. And then so that I know where I'm gonna be when I'm gluing, I have one set to 9mm because I know that if I mark this on the inside of the leather, I know that that's going to account for my trim allowance and my stitching allowance so that I'm gluing up to where my stitches go. You can get away with just having one of these and switching it back and forth. It will save you a whole lot of time to just get one in every size that you need, or one for every size that you'll need. And they're pretty cheap. I think you can get these for like 10 to 15 bucks a piece. I have used this one. This again was one that I got from a friend of mine. This is a Vergez tool. I probably would have never purchased this on my own, just because I don't know that I would have justified spending this much on a wing divider, but I have it now and I absolutely love this tool. It's sharper, so it leaves a better groove. It's locks down with like a brass hand screw, which is a lot more secure than this. These you can kind of move them with your fingers, and I'm constantly having to check those just to make sure that they're the right measurement. These, they lock in, you can't move them. I never have to recheck this one. This is a really great tool, but I would just get the craft tool ones if I were you. Okay, so once you've finished your wallet and you're down to the end, you're going to need a way to finish your edges. So there's a couple things that you're gonna need. You're gonna need sandpaper, you're gonna need an edge beveler, and you're going to need some form of slicker with toconol. That's my preference, at least. There's a lot of burnishing gums and different things that you can use. I think that toconol is the best, and I stand by that. So I just use regular old plain Jane sandpaper, just the 3M wet or dry sandpaper. I use several different grits. I use 400, 800, 1500, 2000, and 3000. Once I get to 3000, you're pretty much burnishing the edges of your leather with sandpaper, so then it makes the finishing stages really easy to do. I use one of these guys for my toconol. It's got a little applicator pad there. You can squeeze this and use it. It just makes it a lot less messy than dipping your finger in your toconol or like using a sponge. I have several different sizes of edge bevelers, and I've had several different brands. I actually don't know what brand these are. If you know what brand these edge bevelers are that have this little ampersand, if this will focus. So my edge bevelers have these little ampersands on them. I have no idea what brand these are. I bought them from a friend of mine who also didn't know what brand they were. These are awesome. They are super sharp. They don't need sharpening very often, and they are buttery smooth. Love them. All right, so if you're going to be saddle stitching by hand, there is a couple methods that you can use. There is what's called the leapfrog method, where you can just hold it in your hand and kind of leapfrog over your stitches. Quarter Leather has a really good video on how to do that. I tried to learn that method. I can technically do that method. It has never been one that is very fast for me. I don't prefer that way. I prefer to stitch with two hands with a stitching pony. I have been through several stitching ponies. This is my favorite that I have owned. This is a Dream Factory stitching pony. This is the medium size. It does not come with leather on the ends, so I would recommend that if you do get a stitching pony like this, that you wrap the ends in some kind of leather so that it does not mark up your wallets and things, because if you clamp this down too tight, you'll leave a line. It clamps straight to my workbench right here, and then I can clamp my project in here and I can stitch away. There are other ways that you can hold your project if you want to saddle stitch with two hands. You can use a book and you can hold it between your knees. I'm kind of a bigger dude, so I had a hard time with that. My knees don't go together so easily. But there's other things. You can go get one that you kind of sit on in between your legs and it still has a screw that tightens down. Whatever works for you. It's very helpful if you're going to saddle stitch to have something that will hold your project in front of you so that you have both hands free, in my opinion. But like I said, Quarter Leather has a great video on how to do the leapfrog method. And I know lots of friends that stitch that way. They have no problems with their stitches. I'm just all about doing it faster, and I like using a stitching pony more, so that's what I use. Lastly, thread. Thread is kind of personal preference. I started out using Ritza Tiger thread. It's a waxed thread, and it works well. I don't dislike it. The thing that I didn't love about it is that it is a wax thread and it tends to lay flat. So it's not really a round thread, it tends to lay really flat, which to me sometimes gives inconsistent looks to your stitching. Kind of like shoelaces, when you get one that's like the flat shoelaces and you get one spot where it's twisted and then your whole shoelaces look off. It's kind of a similar thing. And sometimes waxed thread can look a little dull when you get done stitching with it. It just doesn't shine. I have switched to Vinemo thread. This is a bonded nylon. This thread is not waxed. It is very shiny and has a lot of luster to it. It's a very strong thread, and I really like it. It doesn't have a lot of give to it. It's also a round thread and it stays round because of the bonded nylon, and I love the way that that looks. All right, I'm going to end that one here. I have ranted about tools for far too long today. If this is something that you want to see more of, it kind of sprinkled in throughout some of my making videos, I would love to do more of these. Just let me know down in the comments or give this video a like and I'll know that you guys want to see more of these. We can do videos talking more in depth about leather. We can talk more in depth about tools and specific tools. We didn't really get into a lot of the specialty tools like punches or like strap cutters. We didn't even talk about bone folders, but you should for sure get a bone folder because it helps you open up your pockets and it just helps you finish your pieces. Really, it's totally up to you and your budget as to how you want to start in this. When I first started in this craft, I bought the cheapest kit that I could find off of Amazon and I just started making things. And then as I progressed and as I got a little better at this and I started liking what I was doing and I really wanted to pursue this more, then I started actually investing money into it. I still don't have like the highest end tools. I can for sure get nicer tools, but I have nicer tools now to where I don't really need to go buy more tools anytime soon. But whatever budget you have, there are options out there for you, from, you know, $50 or less kits on Amazon that have a little bit of everything in them, to if you have a Tandy Leather close to you, I would highly recommend just walk into a Tandy Leather and just ask someone that works there if you can get them to help you put together a basic kit for leatherworking as a beginner. But that's pretty much it. If you want to see more of these videos, let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys next Friday with another build along video. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.